All right, so the first tool that we are going to take a look at is the chat writer, and that is probably going to be the most frequently used tool throughout this course. And as we go through this course, you will begin to see why that I tend to prefer these chat writers over other AI writing tools. Um, I have one pulled up here. I've actually got several pulled up. The first one here is Chat Sonic by a company called WriteSonic. This is the tool that we'll be using quite a bit throughout the course, and WriteSonic has some other AI writing tools that we will also incorporate into our lectures. So we have that one pulled up. I've got a tool called Copy AI pulled up, and then finally I've got Chat GPT, the infamous Chat GPT. Um, so ChatGPT got a ton of attention when it was released. It quickly went viral, but it is not nearly the first to market, and it is certainly not the only. And these three are not even beginning to scratch the surface of companies that are in this business of creating chat-based AI writers. So a few things, kind of just general themes I want to bring up about the chat writers with examples. And the first thing is that you're going to get a better overall first draft if you use more than one writer and you mix and match output with light editing. So I'm gonna do an example here to show you what I mean with that. But each of these writers will produce completely different outputs from the same prompt, and in fact, the same writer you could tell it to regenerate, and it would still produce a separate output. So we're going to stay away from medical topics right now and do something extremely simple so that you can really get a feel for the different outputs of the writers. So we're going to do a travel-based article, and we are going to write about the best baguettes in Paris. So just a topic off the top of my head that's a simple example. And we are going to use the absolute most basic prompt possible. If this is your first time using the chat writers and completely unfamiliar with it, this bottom part is where you can give it commands and tell it what to do. So you can see this example that's grayed out. Write a Facebook ad for ChatSonic. You could actually tell it to do something like that. We will be expanding on this quite a bit throughout this course because these prompts can get much, much more detailed and sophisticated so that you can get full outputs, full articles, continuing education activities, all sorts of things that are actually very, very close to, that are very good draft and are very close to being ready to submit. So let's write a very basic command. Write an article about the top 5, now just to keep it real simple, top 3 baguette bakeries, whatever they're called, baguette bakeries in Paris. I'm sure the French have their own word for it, but nonetheless, let's grab that and let's see what ChatSonic will come up with. And for such a basic prompt, it's actually doing an outstanding job. It's actually formatted our headers here, and it's given 3 examples. It's more or less ready to fact check to make sure these actually exist and they're actually in Paris. But what we can see here, let's take this and we will move it over to this copy.ai, and we will do the same thing. So let's see what it does. And what have we got here? Boulangerie Poilong, I guess. So let's see if that one's in here. Looks like that's probably the same as this one. So let's look at the others. The others look like Julien. Looks like they are different. So you actually could combine this and you could say top 5 bakeries if you wanted. But this is a really good start. So let's take the prompt and let's also put it into ChatGPT and see what we get. Got a nice little introduction here. Looks like we're getting some different bakeries. I think that second one, yeah, second and third were both on the other list. So those baguette places must be really good. So let's copy and paste each of these into a Word document so that I can kind of start to show you what I'm talking about mixing and matching output. So we've got, that's output 1, here's output 2, and we don't really need the title. Let's grab output 3. Okay. So we've got our introduction paragraph. So if we were to take the introduction paragraphs from each section, this one is a really, really small introduction, so this might not be the best example, but let's grab the ChatGPT one as well. Let's see, we can now look at taking these 3 and mixing and matching so that we can get a better output. So generally the part, this is kind of your thesis here. This article will guide you to the top 3 baguettes. This one just did not turn out well, so we'll just delete that. Oops. Let's see, with a crispy exterior and a soft interior, the perfect baguette can elevate any meal to new heights. That's really nice. So you can see that this could go right here because this actually fits pretty well now. With a crispy exterior, blah, blah, blah. These golden crusty loaves are a staple in French cuisine. So now I've taken that, I've added it to it. We already have kind of our thesis here, so we don't really need this part. We've incorporated this sentence. Let's see. And we have, I really like this sentence. It probably doesn't fit into here, but I think this is a good example. I've taken one sentence from ChatGPT and I've put it in the output that ChatSonic produced to get a totally different article. So now we can do one more example here because we have, I think, some overlap in bakeries. Let's find the bakeries. Julien. Nope, that one is not here. Okay, so let's take this Poilon because it looks like, I'm sorry if you're French and you're listening to this. I don't speak French, so I'm going to murder these words, but that's not the point. The point's the AI writers. All right, so these are our 2 different outputs here. So we could do the same thing. For web articles, I would typically keep it to 2 to 3 sentences max, so we would probably put a space there. Our first stop takes us to the Boulangerie Poilon, located in this district. Founded in 1932, so we've already got that fact. You can see this fits really well in here. This bakery is known for its sourdough bread, which is made using a traditional French recipe. The baguettes are a delightful blend of a perfect crust with a soft, tender interior. Let's see, the secret lies in the use of the stone ground flour. And then you can see this actually fits well. So the bakery also offers a variety of other breads and pastries, including these cookies. That's something that the other writer did not write about. So, whoops, excuse me. Delete this out. So you can see I've done the same thing here. I've inserted a couple of sentences into the original chat. I believe this is the ChatSonic output. And then I inserted what was probably the copy.ai or ChatGPT output into this this same one. Now, if you were to then go back and tell this writer, 3 different writers, for example, all 3 of these, to write about these 3 specific bakeries, you would get the same. You would get descriptions of the same bakeries for each one, and then you would be able to mix and match for each bakery. So whether you're writing about travel or you're writing about pets or you're writing about medical topics, this listicle format is one of the most common formats. So you could, excuse me, you could easily turn this into the top three side effects to know about with lisinopril. And then you've got 3 headers. The overall theme is the same here. We would do the same thing. So if you want to put, for example, cough, angioedema, and then you want to put altered potassium to make that consumer friendly, then those could be your 3 different topics. Same deal, you mix the output. So sorry I kind of explained that one to death, but I think it's a really, really important point so that you're not only stuck with exactly what the one writer gives you. So that is point number 1. The second point that I want to make, that I will actually show you throughout the course in medical examples, is to give the writer as much information as possible. So you can see this prompt is really, really simple. But if I even do write an article about the top 3 baguette bakeries in Paris, the bakeries you should include are, so now we're telling it, let's just tell it these 3. We're going to give it that one, and we're going to give it this. This article is intended for people who live in Paris. So now it will adjust the article for that audience. So this is where I've already just added a little bit of detail, and I should get better output. And you can already see for those living in Paris. So it's adjusted the article to the audience. And then it's got a description of each one. And again, I can take this output, copy and paste it into each writer. Copy the prompt into each writer and then mix the output. And then again, for those living in the city, so it is targeted the article to your audience. So we're going to go much, much more in depth with these writers. We're not going to stay on the travel topic. This will be the only lecture where we do that, is to give you a real basic introduction to these writers. We're going to go much, much further, and the bulk of this course is going to be on use cases for AI writers, with the majority of that being these chat writers. BotSonic is another really good tool that WriteSonic has, and I'm sure other companies have similar versions. But what this is the ability to take a chat writer and actually give it the input that it's going to use, because typically the chat writers will just scour the entire internet for information, and it will use those sources to create the output for you. With BotSonic, you can actually limit what it is using for its input, and you can then hone in more on what you are looking for. So we're going to go into there, and I want to show you this because, let me see, I believe this is the one. I've actually got an example that I'm currently using or have used for a company I'm actually writing for. Yep, so I got this pulled up here. So once you get to this point, what you can do is you can have it, you can upload whatever you want. You can upload a link. You can upload an entire file. You could take you could take like a PDF of clinical guidelines or something and upload that entire thing into this, and it will be trained on that document. Or you can enter the link to, like the American Diabetes Association website or something like that. So what I have done for my particular case was I uploaded all of the South Carolina Board of Pharmacy rules and regulations. And that's because the particular project I'm working on is a law exam review course, and one of the states that I was asked to write for was South Carolina. So I've got BotSonic trained on each of those. You can see some of these were documents that I actually told it to scan, where I downloaded the regulations and then uploaded it here, and then several were links. So I've got them all pulled up, and then now you can start asking BotSonic questions in here. So let's just use some examples here. What are the requirements for, we don't need to say South Carolina because it's only pulling from there, but from the documents that we trained it on. What are the requirements for a community pharmacy permit? And you can see to obtain, it's kind of giving you briefly what it's doing, but then it's telling you where it's coming from. So if I hit this, it's actually pulling up where it's getting it from. So it's kind of what it's doing is at least telling you which one of the regulations to look at. So what are the requirements for becoming licensed as a pharmacist? Okay, so it's kind of repeating it there. It is useful, and if you really start digging into it. These two examples, it kind of got repetitive. Let's see if we can come up with a better example. How long is a controlled substance prescription valid for? Let's see what it says. This is a totally different topic. There we go. So this is a good example. Okay, now we're getting better. Prescriptions are for Schedule 2 are valid for 31 days, while Schedule 3 through 5 are valid for 90 days. Read more here, and then it's pulling up. Oh, excuse me, it pulled up the actual document. So I won't actually pull it up, but it is telling you it's this Chapter 53 that I trained it on. How long do you have to keep controlled substance? How long do not you. Let's tell it exactly what we're talking about so we get a better output. How long do pharmacies have to keep controlled substance prescriptions? Let's give it a hint, under record keeping requirements. It's typically listed as record keeping, and it immediately told you have to keep it for a period of 2 years. So I think in most cases with medical writing, if you're writing, like the most common types of things would be like, CE and web articles and even pharma presentations and things, this BotSonic might not be as useful. It might take more time than it's worth. But this particular example is a perfect example where BotSonic can save you a ton of time. So it's not necessarily doing the writing for me. I mean, I could try to tell it that. I have tried to tell it that in the past. It didn't do a great job writing the law exam questions for me, but it did a heck of a good job doing the research for me. You could also even use this in your daily practice if you're still practicing as a pharmacist and you've got a subscription to this. You upload all these laws, it'll answer the questions. Now, it's critical if your license or the pharmacy permit is on the line, it's critical to fact check this. Don't take this at face value, but it's giving you a quick answer, and it's also giving you the reference so that you can easily go in and fact check what it is saying. BotSonic, really, really cool tool. And again, there are probably others that are similar to it, but highly encourage you to play around with this. Maybe do this for a state that you're licensed in and see what kind of output you can get. State that you're licensed in where you're familiar with the laws. See what kind of output you can get out of this thing. I think you will be pretty impressed with it. All right, so in a previous course of mine, something I got asked quite often that I ended up adding a lecture to with that course is where do I find images for presentations or articles or anything else you're working on? And while that's not the main focus of this course, I think it is well worth a lecture on because it comes up quite often. And so prior to AI, the biggest source of images would be either public domain images or images licensed under a Creative Commons license. And so that would be websites like Pexels or Pixabay, Wikimedia, things of that nature. Those are still the go-to place for images and kind of make up the bulk of where I get my images. But I wanted to show you a new dimension now to this with AI image creators, of which Writesonic has one that I think is pretty good. So that's the one we're going to use for this lecture. So let's pull up our Writesonic dashboard. We go into here, we just search images. And you can see we've got a Photosonic image generator. Let's click on this one. And what you can see here is these are some of the ones that they consider to be the best generation. So all of these are generated by AI, which are some outstanding images. Another great thing about using AI to create these images is that Google actually does consider images in its ranking algorithm. And if you have original images that have not been posted elsewhere on the internet, that actually is a positive ranking factor for your article. So if you just go to Pixabay or Pexels, Wikimedia, so on and so forth, grab stock images and use them in your blog, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it takes it a step further if you create an original image that has not been posted elsewhere, and that can help the blog with SEO. So you can see we've got an example here. It says Taj Mahal in neon colors as an example. We've got this is where we can type in a description of our image. We can also adjust the layout of the image, and we can have it generate a certain number of images. So let's just go to 4 of them. So let's start with something that we might encounter in the health space. So let's say we're going to go with pharmacist dispensing a prescription, and let's have it generate it. And we will give it just a moment here. And I just chose the square orientation just as an example. But you can see we've got a variety of images to choose from here. Some are better than others. This one looks like the person has an extra hand or something. So that one's kind of weird. That's another reason you want to choose to have it generate multiple images, because they don't all turn out really well. But we've got some good images here. I think these 2 are outstanding images. For the most part. We have this one is also pretty good here. So we've got 3 good ones to choose from. So let's try another example. Let's say doctor using a stethoscope. And so again, these actually can match the quality of a lot of top stock images, and they are also really good because they can give you exactly what you're looking for rather than having to sift through libraries of images. So overall, these actually are really pretty good. The majority of these are good. Looks like we have an extra finger here. So this hand anatomy is also weird. It looks like the image creator has some problems with hands. But we do have some that are usable. So I think this one is usable. And then this one also looks pretty good. Looks like we don't have anything too weird going on with the hands there. I'm not entirely sure what this is. So out of these images, I would probably choose this one. But that's kind of the number one thing to be on the lookout for with these image creators, is things that look off like that, where things don't line up, or like you have you have something where it just looks a little off, and generating a large number of images, 4 or 5 images, rather than just generating 2 images is one way to get around that, because chances are at least one of them will be usable. So really, really encourage you, play around with this tool, practice, see what you can get out of it. And just like with the AI writers, the more specific you are in this description, the better image you are likely to get. So if I write, I'll do one more example to show you what I mean by that, of a doctor using a stethoscope. It should be a painting in the impressionistic style. So now we've really honed in on what we want. So let's generate that. And let's see if Right Sonic can give us a Monet painting here of a doctor holding a stethoscope. So just an example, really hone in on what you're looking for the AI writer to create, and I think you're going to get a lot better results. So it did a great job with that. I mean, I personally and particularly like this one and this one, but that's just a matter of opinion. But you've got 4 great images to use here. So again, practice, hone in, give it plenty of detail, give it the information it needs to create what you're looking for. But by all means, use this to create images that are original for your blog and will also help with your SEO. Okay, so in this portion of the course, we will look at some of the basics, and for this lecture, we will focus on using AI writers to craft titles. So I've got our chat writers pulled up here. I got ChatGPT, the free version, and I've also got Chat Sonic pulled up. So what we want to do here is I've got one paper pulled up, and so we will look at 2 different ways to use it. One is to reword a title, and the other is to create new titles. So we will start with rewording it. So I've got this one right here, Recent Advances of Traditional Chinese Medicine on the Prevention and Treatment of COVID. In my opinion, that title could be a little bit better, could be a little more clear. I could do this by hand, of course. But what I have found is that at times these writers actually do a pretty good job giving me something different. So let's tell it reword this title, which is for, so tell it it's for a paper, a clinical, a peer-reviewed research paper. That's important because you want to make sure that the writer knows clearly that it's not a web article or something where it would need to totally change the style. So let's do that. And let's see what Chat Sonic gives me. We'll give it just a second here. Yeah, you can see this is already a lot better. This is less wordy. Advancements in traditional Chinese medicine for the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. That's far better than this. So you could change it even to recent advancements. I mean, other than that, like the title is somewhat similar. This was a mistake, as I think recent advances in traditional Chinese medicine is correct. Let's just see. Sometimes the reason it's nice, even though I have a subscription to Right Sonic, I still have the free version of ChatGPT, is you sometimes get different outputs. So if you're not entirely happy with it, or you just want to see what else you can get, you might be able to pull it up in ChatGPT. And it says emerging progress in utilizing traditional Chinese medicine for COVID-19 prevention and treatment. I'm not personally crazy about the title. It's pretty wordy. I mean, I do like the word emerging for this because it does imply recent, whereas this other one doesn't really have that. You could just put the word recent in front of here, or you could put you could use the word emerging and somehow incorporate it into that. But that's the reason why, is there are sometimes I would like to combine it. So that is editing an article, or excuse me, editing a title. If you get a job, for example, editing these papers and you're kind of struggling to come up with a good title, that might be one way that you can do so. So let's look at it now at how to create a title. So of course we can create a simple a simple prompt here. So write a title for an article on drug interactions, or excuse me, on, let's just say on like, what's something with a lot of drug interactions? Tickerson drug interactions. So this is something that really doesn't give the writer a whole lot of information, and so you can see you're not going to get very much back. Understanding Tickerson drug interactions, a comprehensive guide. I mean, I could have come up with that faster on my own. Let's see if we can get something better out of it. So write a title for a web article on Tickerson drug interactions. Now let's expand. Let's tell the writer a little bit more. The article will include a list of 7 drug interactions. It is, let's see, this article is intended for this article is written for patients, not for healthcare providers. Make the title easy to understand. Let's see what we get out of this one. And you can see this is better, a little bit better. 7 common drug interactions with Tickerson, what you need to know. Now let's try it again, because that was a consumer health side. Now let's try the provider side. So sometimes the easiest thing is to copy and paste this prompt and then just adjust it. Let's see, for a provider, a continuing education article on Tickerson drug interactions. So now we're going to change it up a bit, because it's not going to just be 7. This CE activity is intended to educate physicians, pharmacists, and nurses. There's a pretty typical audience for that. It will be presented as a monograph. That way it knows it's not a presentation. Let's see if we can get anything better out of it with that. Yeah, and you can see that's really not a bad title either. Exploring Tickerson drug interactions, implications for clinical practice and patient safety. So the titles are a very simple way of this is a very simple way of adjusting the language that you get, the output that you get from these writers. I wanted to start with the title because it's so short, it's very easy to understand. We're going to expand on this later in the course by using these kinds of prompts to get entire articles out of these chat writers that are either geared towards patients or geared towards healthcare providers, and essentially geared towards different types of audiences. And just like with this first one, what I would do if I was looking for a title and I wasn't entirely happy with these is I would plug these same titles in ChatGPT and I would see what I get, and I would either take one or the other, or you can take ideas from one and incorporate it into the other to get your own title that is a mixture of the two outputs. All right, this lecture is going to be a little bit shorter, but I want to make sure that you know how to include headers with these chat writers. So we are going to start with our Word document here. Rather than entering it directly into these prompts, now we're going to put some of what we've learned together, and we're going to have it start creating an article. So what we wanted was the top 7 Tickerson drug interactions. So we have gotten, let's see, we're going to go back and grab some of our prompts. Let's see, let's do an article intended for a healthcare provider. So let's copy and paste this prompt to begin with. So write Now what we want to do is we're actually going to see if we can get it to write an entire article, and I want to do that to show you how to include headers. This article will review the mechanisms of action of each drug interaction as well as their management. And so let's just pull the medications that it said. Each of these are going to be our headers. That'll be faster so that we can focus on the writing rather than on the medical part of it. So to get it to write a header, we're going to get this little arrow button here. And a header, the largest header in most web articles is a header 2. So we are going to put H2 like that. That is a command telling it that everything after it is a header 2. So diuretics. And we will just keep on going. Whoops. Keep on going. So what I can do to make this even faster is just copy and paste this a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we copy and paste this. And we're just going to take each one of these and we're going to make these our headers. Narcotics, antibiotics, antidepressants, and medicines to treat mental illness. Okay, so there are the 7 that the AI writer gave us. So we will use that as our example. With that, now we have our headers laid out, and we're also telling it to write a web article. Because obviously, if we just tell it to write headers, all it's going to do is format each of these in a header. But what we will do is tell it to fill this article out. So now we take all of this and we copy and paste it. And that's a key point I want to get across in this portion of the course, is for simple commands like just titles and intros, asking the writers questions about stuff like provide 3 self-care tips for a bummed knee or something. You won't need to do anything except enter it directly into the writer. But as you start getting more and more sophisticated, where you can get it to crank out entire articles that are close to the format you're looking for, and contain the content you're looking for, you're going to want to actually write your prompt into these Word documents as opposed to into the writer. So this is a key thing where I really think the field of medical writing at some point is going to move from writing an article from a blank page to writing a prompt from a blank page, getting the raw output, and then editing that. So this is going to be a more simple example, but this is the foundation that we're going to build on throughout this course, as well as using other writing tools. So let's get this going to start with. This is a more basic example, and let's put this bad boy in here, see what happens. And one thing I do like about WriteSonic is that it has a higher word limit than ChatGPT, at least at the time of this recording. I've seen that ChatGPT will stop writing relatively quickly, whereas WriteSonic, it can last a little bit longer. So now we've got a pretty good thing. So let's just take all of this and copy and paste it in the Word document. So we can, I'm going to go into a separate one, because what I can do is I'll give you this output, I'll give you as a resource for the course in a Word document. So I want you to see the prompt as well as see this here so that you can look at it for yourself as a download. And so what we've got going on here is a pretty good start to a web article. The length looks a little bit short to me. Let's grab a word count real quick. Typical web article, just as a real ballpark guide, might be around 800 words. That can vary a lot, but that's a rough ballpark. Yeah, we've got 513 words. That's kind of on the short end for most web articles, especially for healthcare providers. But what you do have is an outstanding start to this. So what I would do at this point is I would go through and edit each one of these. for style, and then I would expand on the detail of these. So maybe expanding on the mechanism of action. You can see this web writer just put management in a list format. I would write that out in more of a paragraph form. You could add detail like monitor potassium levels regularly. Maybe there's a frequency you would monitor them. So just adding things like that in. So let's now go back, and now we will see if it can give us a patient article. So I'll do the same thing that I did last time. We'll grab a new chat. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab that prompt we had from the previous lecture. I think that was here. Let's see. No, excuse me. It was this one right here. Write an intro to a web article. Yeah, here we go. This is the patient article. So let's go down here. I'm going to start a new page. And now what I can do is write a web article. I don't want an intro. I want a whole article. And then I will take these headers that we've already got, and I will copy and paste them here. So this is now our patient article prompt. Exact same thing, just changing up the style a little bit. Now let's see what it can give us. Let's grab a new chat so we don't get any problems with the previous output. Little bit underwhelmed with this particular output, so let's see if we can expand this about a little bit. Let's see. So what we can do, if you get a real short output with this, let's say this article should be around 800 words in length. Oh, you know what it did? I didn't have the H2 programmed on that. Let's still have this. Let's write 2 to 3 paragraphs under each header. So let's see if maybe there was a reason why this H2 part didn't get carried over. Let's see here. Let's delete this out. So we are telling it a little more, excuse me, whoops. We're giving it a little more of the length. Let's just do this. I am going to copy and paste this. Okay, let's try copy and pasting this whole thing again. And let's make sure that H2 is in there. Okay, now we've got each of these H2s in here. And we are telling it the approximate length. With how many paragraphs under each header. Let's see if we get a better output this time. There we go. Now it's looking a little bit better. Still not as many paragraphs as I would have hoped for. But we got at least a good start on that. I'm going to give you this raw output for that download. Let's copy and paste that into here. And what I would maybe do in this particular case, since the output is not quite as much as I was hoping for, is I would take this and I would also plug it into ChatGPT. So we could do the same thing into ChatGPT. And you can see it is listing each header. It's just not formatting it as clean as Writesonic is. But it actually is giving more output than the other article is. So we could probably use a lot of these paragraphs and mix them in with Writesonic as well. So for these articles, I highly recommend you start by playing around with this format yourself. Try creating your own articles, maybe on a different medication with different drug interactions or on side effects or something. And also taking these and just copying and pasting these prompts into your Writesonic, into your ChatGPT, whatever other AI writer you may be playing around with, and seeing what you can get. Because the best way to learn these writers is to experiment with them. So for that reason, that's a big reason I wanted to give you these as a good starting prompt. Let's now move to looking at both intros and conclusions, which is another great thing that these chat writers can help you with, because a lot of the conclusions and intro paragraphs they follow the same format, especially for web articles, but even with continuing education activities, there's a really kind of standard way to go about them, which makes them very a very good thing for these writers to be able to help you with. So we will start again with the basics. So as an example, I've got our ChatSonic pulled up here as well as ChatGPT. So we could say, write an intro to a web article. We're going to use the same example that we did in the on the last lecture about titles. So on top Tikasin drug interaction. So this is kind of the most basic prompt you can give it, where you're really not giving the chat writer any information other than the keyword or the topic. And you can see it really did not do too badly. So Tikasin is a popular medicine used to treat heart arrhythmias. You can interact with other medications. In this article, we'll look at the top drug interactions. And you can see whether you're a patient taking Tikasin or a healthcare professional prescribing it. So it doesn't quite know who the audience is. That was pretty clear from this. Just like with last time, with the title lecture, we can also plug it into ChatGPT and see what we get. And you can see this one it's got a lot in it. There's probably some good parts here, but this is really long for an introduction, especially for a web article. I can't imagine sticking to any more than like 2 paragraphs at the most for an intro paragraph for consumer health. And especially when they're longer like this, three sentences, like this one is relatively long for a web article for consumers. But what you can do is you can use both of these. So I'm going to take this and copy and paste it into our Word document here. I don't know why we got this gray. It's going to aggravate me. Let's see if we can get rid of that. Okay. No, might need to just put up with it. Okay, so we will grab this too. Let's grab this off of the right sonnet. And now you can essentially mix these if you wanted. I think, whether you're a patient or healthcare provider prescribing it, we don't really need that. So I also don't think we need this catchy stuff. Let's dive in and explore the world of Tikasin drug interactions. We're not talking about hiking through Southeast Asia or something. We're talking about Tikasin drug interactions. So we don't need to try to be that cute about our last sentence. And you can see the Chat GPT writer did the same thing. So fasten your seatbelt as we embark on a journey through the labyrinth of Tikasin drug interactions. That's a little too much for a medical article. However, this next part, we don't want to harness the full potential, but you can say here, we'll explore the key Tikasin interactions you need to be aware of. And then you could give a general disclaimer, contact your healthcare provider before taking any new prescription or over-the-counter medications. We could word that better. I mean, I'm implying the healthcare provider who wrote the Tikasin. I just don't want to spend the time trying to make that sentence perfect, because my point is to teach you the AI writers. So this isn't bad in of itself, but you could actually pull from some of this Chat GPT stuff to get any better. So I like this about making informed decisions on your treatment plan. And you can see here, ChatGPT didn't know who the audience was either. So we are going to say this is for patients. So you can say something about making informed decisions. This will help you make informed decisions, something like that. You could clean it up. But my point is what we're doing here is we're mixing the outputs from two different writers to get an intro paragraph that we like, which is one really, really good strategy. So with that being said, let's head back over to the chat writers. And what we're going to do this time is we are going to try to improve this. So we're telling it to write in a web article on top TICAS and drug interactions. Let's now say this is going to be a consumer health article. So we're going to go back to the same example for our titles. There will be 7 drug interactions listed. This article is intended for patients. Write at let's say write at an 8th grade or lower reading level. Now you're telling it specifically, don't get wordy. So it will do that. Use short sentences of let's say 10 words at the most. So now you're really prompting it to tell it exactly how to write your article. So let's see what this gives us. So this is actually pretty good for a handout or something where you really want to be sure that everybody can understand it. I think we could go a little bit more of a flow with a consumer health article. But you can see from this demonstration how different the output is if you compare this top one to the bottom one. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a 5-word sentence. Drug interactions can be dangerous. When different drugs mix, bad things can happen. Ticasine is a drug that helps your heart beat regularly. It's important to know which drugs don't mix with ticasine. This article will tell you about 7 drugs that could be dangerous. If you take ticasine, you need to know about these interactions. Your doctor can help you avoid problems. This is not a bad start at all for something where you're really wanting a lower reading level. Again, we could do the same thing. We could take this and put it in ChatGPT. And I'm not sure that it did quite as good of a job following my instructions. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 words is already there. So it didn't follow my instructions, which is another good reason to use multiple writers. Still, there's not some bad output here, and it could be incorporated into the intro. So we've now expanded on the article. We've told it to what the topic is about. We've told it the audience. We've told it it's intended for patients. We've told it how many interactions there will be, which it did incorporate into this output. And we've told the writer what reading level to write at. So we've really kind of honed in on our output so that we have to edit less. So let's switch this over and let's get this prompt going for a healthcare provider. So I'm going to copy and paste so I don't have to start from scratch here. So now this article is intended for healthcare providers. And obviously we don't want to have a low reading level because that's not the intent of an article for healthcare providers. Review, but what we do want for healthcare providers is we want to tell it what it may want to talk about. So this article will review the mechanism of action of each drug interaction, as well as discuss their management. So, can you take the drugs together at all? Are they totally contraindicated? Do you need to lower the dose of one? things of that nature. So we are telling the writer that. So let's see what it does now. So let's see. It's commonly prescribed for patients with AFib. It's important. In this article, we'll discuss the top 7 drug reactions and review the mechanisms of action for each interaction. We'll discuss management strategies. So we need to redo this. So you can see it's still pulling in from the previous prompt. So that was a bug in this particular output. So what we're going to do, let's copy and paste this in case this happens to you. Let's do this. Let's go into a brand new chat. Let's try this again. There we go. So now we got a little better output. This antiarrhythmic is known to interact with several other medications, including diuretics, antiretrovirals, other antiarrhythmics, so on and so on. Understanding the mechanisms and their management is crucial to ensuring the safety and effectiveness of TICAs. And so now it's really laid out what this article is about. So we're actually really glad that bug happened, so I can show you how to quickly fix that issue. But we've got some really good output now. So we've now got intros for consumers, and we've told the writer how to write at a low reading level. And we've got intros for healthcare providers, and we've told the writer to go into more depth into what the article will actually be about. So that's an excellent start. Excuse me. So let's now move on to conclusions, because we can do the same thing with a conclusion here. I will actually copy and paste this, because this is all of this information is good, still good for it to know for conclusions. So write a conclusion to a web article on top TICAs and drug interactions. So actually the rest of this prompt looks pretty good. So let's just see what kind of output we get here. Highly effective medication, helps maintain sinus rhythm. It interacts with several meds. Yeah, healthcare providers must be aware of the top 7 interactions. They list a few of them. I mean, this is not a bad output. I would certainly do some light editing to this. This longer paragraph is okay for healthcare providers. You could still, for a web article, you maybe would want to break it up. I would probably break this portion into a separate paragraph, but you still this output is very good, as you can see. Doesn't really need a whole lot to it. So we could do the same thing for the patient article. So if I had gone back, let's see if this is still here. If I go back, see, this article is, here's our original prompt for the patients. You can see what I've done is gone to the left, and there's the history right there. So article on TICAs and drug interactions. This is the prompt for our web article for consumers. Let's go into a new chat so we don't get that bug we got a little bit earlier. Write a conclusion to a web article on top TICAs and drug interactions. And then we're telling it what it's about. So copying the exact same prompt as the intro, this time for the consumer health article. So it's important to tell the doctor. You can see now they're telling you to tell your doctor, so it clearly knows the audience. Here it's listing some medications. These certainly look like the majority of the medications. I think there are a few I would add to this list, but you could always change the names of these if you cover different medications than the one that are listed. Again, a very, very solid conclusion. So you could take this and also put it into the ChatGPT and mix and match. So that is the conclusion of this lecture, which has gone over how to prompt these chat writers for both intro paragraphs and for conclusion paragraphs for either consumer health or healthcare providers, and how to tell it to how to correctly get it to identify the audience and to adjust the reading level to that audience. The most common things that I have heard from medical writers is their concern over the accuracy of these AI writers and saying that they're not accurate enough to use and you shouldn't use them because you can't trust what they say. I will say that that was probably partially true when the writers first came out. They are getting better and better all the time. I think that concern is much, much less of a concern now, even at the time of this recording, than it was when the writers were first released. And certainly, as the writers continue to be improved upon and developed, that's going to become even less of a concern. However, I have on occasion see it spit out things that were inaccurate. And so in this lecture, I am going to attempt to get it to do that, and we'll see if we can get an inaccurate output. So I've got our two writers pulled up. I've got copy.ai and I've got ChatSonic, so two that we've used throughout this course. Excuse me. And then we will, what we will do is we'll give it a prompt that tries to induce or tries to create an inaccurate output. So let's say write a paragraph on the use of sulfonylureas for schizophrenia. So that's sulfonylureas, the old oral antidiabetics, and we're telling it to write about using it for schizophrenia. So obviously an inaccurate statement. And so if we tell it to do that, let's see what we can get out of it. So let's see, they've been researched for the potential benefits in treating schizophrenia. Let's see, talk a little bit about mechanisms. So you can see, I would personally have to research this to find out whether that is true or not true. It actually did a pretty good job avoiding this question or avoiding giving too strong of a statement, because it's clearly not saying that they are a mainstay of treatment for schizophrenia. Now, I wasn't personally aware of any kind of research on sulfonylureas for schizophrenia. I'm certainly not a psych pharmacist, so if you are and you're taking this course, maybe you're aware of it. But you can see that it's possible there maybe is some research there, but it's certainly doing a good job not making any strong statements. So let's put it in copy.ai and see what it does. And you can see it is actually telling you that it's not used to treat schizophrenia, and it's referring you to several antipsychotics, and making other stuff about supportive measures. So even forcing this first time, we had a kind of a hard time getting inaccurate output. So write about the benefits of, let's find something, Strattera, in the management of colon cancer. So another thing, the drug is mismatched with the disease. Strattera is the ADHD drug. We are telling it to write about its use in colon cancer. Let's see what we get. And you can see we still didn't get an inaccurate output, really, because they're telling you it's for ADHD. There's no established research suggesting a benefit in the use of colon cancer. And it's giving you this about research continually evolving and new uses for existing drugs are often discovered. I think that's true. I mean, we have seen that a lot. So I don't think that's an inaccurate statement to say that it's possible existing drugs that have been on the market for a long time would find new uses, including for colon cancer. But it's also saying that's inappropriate for that to be suggested at this time. So this is actually still very good output. So let's see. Let's go to copy.ai and try again. I'm sorry, there seems to be some confusion here. Yeah, I would be confused too. It is not intended for the management of colon cancer. So still got, oh, excuse me, we had a little more output there. Just discusses colon cancer a little bit more. So still we got accurate output. Let's try one more. Let's try something where it might be a dangerous drug interaction. Write about the benefits. This will go back to our previous portion of the course of hydrochlorothiazide in patients taking Ticasin. So another clearly inaccurate prompt, trying to see if we can force it to say something wrong. So in this case, it looks like we probably did get something wrong because these are more or less contraindicated medications. So they do acknowledge that they have significant drug interactions and that it can increase the concentration. And that is not a combination you would typically use together. So they give you this output about using them together may have potential benefits when that's actually not true. So there is our first example with how many prompts is that? I think that's three different prompts of trying to force inaccurate output, and this was the first time that we got something that might be considered inaccurate or at the very least not a balanced approach to writing that article. Let's plug that back into the copy AI and see what it says. Yeah, there's no direct benefit in patients taking Ticasin, and they can interact with each other. HCTZ can increase the concentration. So yeah, so avoid it. So this is still giving you an accurate output. So I wanted to give you these demonstrations on the accuracy of AI writers to kind of set your mind at ease a little bit that yes, you will get some inaccurate things possibly on occasion. You do need to be aware that it's not going to be 100% accurate, but I don't want you to also think that 50% of what it is saying is inaccurate, or that a large portion is inaccurate and that you just can't trust anything that the AI writers produce, because I also think that's not true. And I hope this demonstration has helped demonstrate that with this level of accuracy, they are very useful tools for medical writers to be able to complete their work faster, and then also to be able to expand on things that they maybe are wanting to say to help medical writers produce even better articles. Chat writers are another approach to creating consumer health articles. And so in this portion, we will look at how to create those articles with a chat writer. So let's go ahead and get a prompt going for a consumer health article. And we're going to stick to the drug interactions topic, since that would be a very common topic that you would see with any kind of consumer health website. So for this, let's look at ACE inhibitor interaction. So ACE inhibitor side effects. So let's say we'll leave the number blank for right now. Side effects of lisinopril. Even though it would be common to all ACE inhibitors, it is also very, very common to actually specify this, because you might have people searching for lisinopril in Google and not ACE inhibitors. In fact, I would argue more would be searching for the side effects of the particular drug they were prescribed. So that's going to be the topic of the article. Let's actually have it write our outline first. So just like we had done in a previous lecture, write an outline for a consumer health article on the top side effects to know about lisinopril. Include at least 5 headers for this article. Let's just start with that. Let's see what we get. I'm going to just put it in, stick to just ChatSonic for right now. And this will give us our side effects. So that's a really good thing. You can do like, what is lisinopril? Let's see. Let's pull this output. That's not a bad one. I think what we're going to do, though, let's get this in our document. I think what we will actually do, because I picture this article as being more of a listicle with each of the side effects. Let's actually, you know what? Let's just delete this. Let's start over. That one had some good things in it. Each header should describe a specific side effect of lisinopril, because that's what I'm really wanting it to do. All right, let's put that in there and see what it does. Now we're getting a little bit more we want. Yeah, so cough and swelling, high potassium levels, classic side effects of that particular drug. So those would have been the 3. I think almost any pharmacist would have included. Yeah, I could see the dizziness possibly from hypotension, for example. So this really isn't a bad outline. So from here, what we could do is write this article based on the outline you just produced. The article, let's describe a little bit more. The article should be written at an 8th grade reading level or lower. That's really targeting the consumer health side. We're making sure that it's not getting too complicated. The article should be around 1,000 words each. Let's see. The text under each header should be 150 to 200 words each. Let's see what it gets if we just tell it to write the article. So far, so good. So it is certainly giving simple sentences. You can see these sentences are short. And you can see that it doesn't have any medical jargon in there. So overall, it's pretty well written. I would say if I had anything that would be kind of a complaint about this, it would be that it's not nearly long enough. We would need to expand on this. Let's actually see what the word count is. I'm going to go ahead and copy our output in here not our output, our prompt in here as well, so that you've got that. So we told it to write the outline, and then we told it to write the article based on the outline it just did. I don't think this is going to be around 1,000 words, but I could be wrong. Yeah, it's 513 words. So this article is a little bit too short. So what we could do is we can tell it expand on the dizziness header, provide more detail on why you get dizzy and how you can manage it. It should be 2 to 3 paragraphs. So that's one way. Let's see what it does here. So the one thing it did, we probably should have told it again to keep the reading level at an eighth grade reading level or lower. You can see this sounds very different from the previous one. It's got too much jargon in there, dilating the blood vessels and stuff. We don't need this. It's just widening the blood vessels would be enough. However, I do think that this is not a bad output that could be used to expand this point. We could put this here, and then from here we could just manually edit this. So for example, how severe the dizziness is may vary from person to person. Sentence, it can range from a mild. So you could do things like that, or you could say something, you could even do it this way. So you could say, rewrite this, let Writesonic do the work. This is why I really enjoy doing this course without doing all these prompts before I record, because I want to show you what happens when you face these unexpected outputs. So I got an output that I didn't quite like. The reading level is too high. So let's say rewrite this text for a lower reading level. The sentences should be short and the reading level should be no higher than 8th grade. Rewrite this text for a lower reading level. So let's see, I believe it should know that I'm referring to the text above. We can make that more clear. Rewrite this section on dizziness for a lower reading level. Let's see what it does. If we have to, we'll copy and paste it if it doesn't know what I'm talking about. So very, very different output. So that's a lot lower reading level. It's also a lot less text. But if we copy and paste this, then we could plug it into here. And now we've got all of our various outputs. So we've got this stuff about how severe the dizziness is. So, I mean, it kind of says that here, but essentially what we want to do from this point is mix all of these outputs to get what we're looking for. So that's the same thing that we will do in the continuing education portion of the course. So you can essentially like copy and paste, delete some of these sections and come up with a hybrid of all of these along with some manual edits that is a lot cleaner. So if you were to do that for each section, then you would be a whole lot closer to, let's say, 800 to 1,000 words, which might be a very typical article for any kind of blog, including in the health and wellness space. So I will also provide this prompt for you because this is a good example of how to continue to tell it to tweak the output to your liking. So that's another option outside of the article writer. I think with the article writer, the advantage is that it's really fast. If you already have your headers, like you already know you're going to write about dizziness and you're going to write about cough, swelling, and high potassium levels, you can use Writesonic's Article Writer 4.0 and just plug those headers in. It'll spit the whole thing out. Typically, it does a pretty good job for consumers. Where the chat writer comes in handy is if you're not quite getting the output you like, then the chat writer gives you more flexibility to actually tell the AI writer what you're wanting. So in this particular case, we told it that we wanted it should be at an 8th grade reading level or lower. So you could tell it write no more than 10 words per sentence as an example, or you could tell it, all sorts of things to essentially customize the output to your liking. So it takes more time to produce the raw output from a chat writer, but it also allows for more customization. So those are the trade-offs of the two. Often what I do is I start with the article writer 4.0. I see what I get. The output, if it's really good, I'll continue on and use that output. If it's not at all what I'm looking for, then I move over to the chat writer and I start working with the chat writer to get my raw output. All right, next up is the CE needs assessment. So we are going to start by taking a look at what a CE needs assessment is to catch you up if you have not done continuing education before or need a refresher on what that is. And then we are going to use WriteSonic to write an example of one. So let's go ahead. I've got this blank document pulled up. So like with the other lectures, we can copy and paste the output into here, and I can save that so you have an example of the raw output. But let's go ahead and look at an example of one. So I've got one pulled up here. This is for a CE that I am have actually been doing for a while now, currently doing with Achieve CE. So anytime you pitch a continuing education program to one of these CE companies, you will need to complete a CE needs assessment, and that is a requirement for them to maintain their accreditation to continue providing CE to healthcare professionals. And the CE needs assessment is essentially this part right here. So we've got the title here, and right below here we've got the activity overview, and that typically describes like the unmet need, like why this continuing education course is needed for, in this case, for pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. And then on top of that, it describes how the continuing education course will fill that need. So here is the both of those things, and for this particular company, they have it in the section called Activity Overview. Depending on the provider, you might see slightly different things. And then the other thing that's a requirement is clear learning objectives, and they typically do need to be different for different audiences. And so this program is accredited for pharmacists and for pharmacy technicians, so you can see there are two different sets of learning objectives for each audience. So this entire section here is the CE needs assessment. So what we are going to do is we are going to see if we can get ChatSonic to crank one out for us. So let's go over here to our ChatSonic, and let's tell it what we want to do. So write a needs assessment for a continuing education course. This course is for pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. I would spell that out. Don't just abbreviate using technicians, because there's a lot of types of technicians in other industries. We want to make sure we're crystal clear with this robot, what we're talking about. The topic of the course is on, we're going to use handling hazardous substances as our example. So like USP 800 and pharmacy best practices for handling hazardous substances. The needs assessment, now we need to tell it what it should include an activity overview. Activity overview that describes the need for the program and how the continuing education activity will fill that need. Okay, so we've got our activity overview here. Now we need our learning objectives. So it should also include 4 learning objectives. I just used 4. Some providers will take as little as 3. Some might want 5 or 6. So just using 4 as an example. 4 learning objectives for pharmacists and 4 learning objectives for pharmacy technicians. So at this point, we've done a pretty good job describing what we need. Let's see, needs assessment for CE. We've described the audience. So that's another, again, a recurring theme throughout this course. You need to tell these writers who the audience is. We've described the topic, and then we've described exactly what we want it to write. So let's see what we get here. Let's go ahead and hit enter. And we'll give it just a moment here to generate this output. Okay, we got so yeah, we definitely don't need this for a CE activity, but let's see what we've got. It looks like overall we've got a decent first draft. So let's see what it says. Increasing prevalence of hazardous substances necessitates pharmacists and pharmacy technicians to be equipped with the necessary knowledge and skills to handle these substances safely. That's a great sentence that really sets up what the need is the audience of this course will be handling hazardous substances, so they need to know how to handle them. Despite this, there's a knowledge gap in our workforce as highlighted in this assessment. This I would probably delete, but that's okay. We are definitely not providing 18 hours of accredited education, but that's an easy thing to change. So this you could say this continuing education course fills the gap by providing 18 out. By and then deleting this, focusing on the safe handling of hazardous substances. So this isn't a bad activity overview. You would certainly need to do some manual editing for that. Let's see, pharmacist learning objectives, implications and safety regulations, strategies for managing risk, safe disposal and management, and protocol. So this isn't too bad either. That's not terrible learning objectives. If you decide later on that you would like to focus on other things, this is easy enough to tweak or just add a learning objective. And this is great because it's saying gain knowledge about the types of hazardous substances. So you can see for pharmacy technicians, the knowledge is not quite as in-depth as it is for pharmacists, because pharmacists would be expected to already know this. So that is an excellent learning objective. Learn practical skills for safe handling, another excellent learning objective. That technicians absolutely need to understand that. Implementing safety measures and develop proficiency in using PPE when dealing with hazardous substances. I would say these learning technicians, right, Sonic got a 10 out of 10 on this one. I really don't even know that I would touch this. And then let's see. We don't need any of this. We're not having interactive sessions and stuff. This is easy enough to delete, but this is a pretty good start. I'm going to show you, let's go ahead and copy and paste this output into our resources here. I'm going to just copy and paste, I guess, everything but the references. We don't need that. And then before I got on to record this call, I did test this out using a slightly different prompt. So I'm going to show you that prompt as well. I've got that in my history here. So I wrote a little bit shorter of a prompt. Write a needs assessment for a C course for pharmacists and technicians. And I didn't really describe the activity overview as much, but this is what it gave me. Of course, this title isn't very good. Let's see. Oh, excuse me. I put this one was on handling controlled substances, so the topic is different. But I didn't provide as much details. I'll copy and paste this in our needs assessment document as well so that you have two different examples. And I will save both of the prompts so that you have the prompts for that. And then if you get a job doing a CE course, or you want to pitch a CE course to a company, then you've got a good prompt to get started with for these needs assessments. So let's see. Let's take a look at this one, especially with it being a different topic, and let's see how it did on this one. Let's see. Had become a critical issue in our society today. That's a pretty good sentence. The course aims to educate pharmacists and technicians on the responsible handling of controlled substances. understanding of the rule and regulations, and practical strategies. So to me, this is an outstanding activity overview. I would do very little to this. I mean, I think this is almost ready to submit. You can see it addresses the need, and then it addresses the goals of the course, which is educating pharmacists and technicians on handling controlled substances. And then it elaborates on that in the last portion. We got some good, let's see, we've got some learning objectives for pharmacists, understanding regulations. Yep, identifying red flags, prevention strategies, and reporting and documentation. And then technicians, let's see, classification of controlled substances. So here again, that's a really good division between pharmacists and technicians. Pharmacists should be expected to know that already. And of course, technicians, many technicians understand the classification of controlled substances. But my point is that typically the learning objectives for technicians should be at a more basic level than pharmacists. And so this writer actually did a good job distinguishing between those. I think inventory management is another outstanding objective for technicians because at many pharmacies, they're at least expected to manage the inventory of at a minimum of 3 through 5s, with pharmacists typically managing Schedule 2s, but this is another great learning objective. Customer interactions, that's another great one for technicians just because that would be very applicable to their practice. Document and report suspicious behavior to their supervising pharmacists. So these objectives are extremely well tailored for pharmacists and technicians. So you can see this could take, if you had to write it by hand, it still doesn't take long, but it could take you an hour and a half, maybe longer if it's the first one you've ever done. And you're starting with a blank page. So this keeps you from having to start with a blank page. So I hope you find this useful and that it's something that you can use in your medical writing business. And again, I will leave the prompts for both of these as well as the output for both of these so you have examples that you can tweak to the continuing education program that you're actually working on. Clinical trial summaries are so common and important to medical writing that even though we touched on it in the continuing education lecture, I thought it was well worthy of a lecture of its own. So we are going to do a couple more examples of clinical trial summaries using the AI writers. So I just pulled up 2 random trials. They're not exactly random. The first is the all-hat trial. I think basically no pharmacy student can get through school without hearing about the all-hat trial. And then I have another one that's the same deal. I think it'd be pretty hard to get through pharmacy school without hearing about the Val-Heft trial. So 2 classic landmark trials, and we are going to use these as our example trials to look at developing a clinical trial summary. So I have got our ChatSonic pulled up, and I've got our copy.ai pulled up. Let's start with ChatSonic, and let's start with the all-hat trial. So let's copy the entire title, and let's say write a summary of the trial entitled "It should include information on the methods, inclusion and exclusion criteria." I know that's technically part of the methods, but again, it's best to give these writers the most detail you can possibly give them. So inclusion and exclusion criteria, number of patients, if they controlled for comorbid conditions, the results, and the author's the author's conclusions. Also discuss the implications of the trial and how it impacted clinical practice. Let's just start with a prompt like that. So relatively straightforward prompt. You can see we've got no headers here. So I doubt it's going to give us any headers because we didn't tell it to give any headers. And you can see it's given us some pretty good output, actually. It's describing the trial with each of the medications. Here's our inclusion criteria and our exclusion criteria, number of patients. Overall, you can see this is a pretty good clinical trial summary. So we're going to I will start with this prompt. And I will put that in your document for your reference, as well as the output and the prompt both. I'll put those in here for you to have. So let's put this in our copy.ai now, and let's see what we get out of it. Because again, what we can do is we can mix and match output here. So it gave us headers, but you can see, to me, this looks a little less usable because each of these sections is just so short. It more or less just answered our questions. But I can copy and paste this in here because if you were to go back and manually edit this, there would probably be some of these things, some parts of this that you could use. Okay, so that is one potential way of getting a clinical trial summary. Let's do the same thing now, and let's instead have it write about this Valheft trial and see what kind of output we get here. I'm going to change this to the Valheft trial. You know what, let's start a new chat because I want to make sure we get everything clean here where we can see it. But the same prompt, there's our Valheft prompt. And let's see what we can get out of the chat writer. And looks like overall very, very similar output. So I would say that for me, the right Sonic is winning here. We can put this one in copy.ai, but I would say this is a much, much more usable clinical trial summary. Let's try copy.ai again for this one and see what we can get. But if it gives us the same headers with short. Yeah, so this has bullet points. There are times when you can, this can be really, really useful. I'm not entirely sure why it gave us bullet points here because we never told it to do that, but that would be something that you can do. You could specifically tell it to include these headers and these bullet points. So I'll copy this and I will put this output in there as well for our summary of Valheft. And the prompt is exactly the same. It's just Valheft instead of all hat. So let's see, there's that output. And we're just going to call this Valheft so you know what it is. Kind of know, or excuse me, so you know where the output for each one starts and stops. So overall, pretty decent output using the chat writer. Another option we can do, let's go back over here under our chat Sonic, and let's try pulling up the article writer 4.0. And now let's say a summary. The top is going to be a summary of the all hat trial. So we are going to put that in here, and we are going to see if we can get, we definitely want third person in this case. We are going to see if we can get some good output with this. Let's generate 3 ideas with our titles because it might actually produce some titles that aren't really usable. In this case, I don't really think any of these are particularly good. I would guess this one would be the best. Let's generate 3 outlines as well to see what we get. But these, I think probably the best thing would be to kind of copy the format of the trial where you have methods and things of that nature. So, you know, overall, not entirely bad. Let's just pick this one because either way we're going to change it. I think this background and purpose is an excellent thing to include. It wouldn't typically be included in the in a clinical trial summary in most cases, but we will. This reads more like an editorial, so we'll just include this background and purpose just because I'm curious to see what it actually says, what kind of output it can give us. Let's follow the similar thing. So methods, results, authors, conclusions, and let's just say implications for practice. So we've got our chat writer version, and now we will check out the article writer version. Make sure we've got our third person. We've got the highest possible word quality, and let's generate it and see what we get. So overall, that's pretty good. That's a great introduction. It kind of provides the background to really understand why it was conducted. Yeah, it gives you a little bit of historical background. There was debate about the best initial treatment for hypertension. So yeah, I wouldn't have thought of including this in a typical clinical trial summary, but this is actually great information. And you can see overall, it looks like, at least in this case, the reading level is a little bit lower than it was with the chat writer. So this actually looks like it's pretty close to being able to be used for even a consumer health article, but certainly for the general web, if you're writing a web article for providers or other healthcare professionals on a trial, this is actually outstanding. As always, there would be some editing we'd maybe want to do here, but it's got some really good information. It's more or less got it already laid out for you. The ALLHAT trial had a profound impact on the treatment of hypertension. I would say that's absolutely true. Led to a shift in clinical practice, with diuretics becoming the preferred initial therapy. Sparked debate and controversy. And yeah, I mean, this is another outstanding output. So I'm going to copy and paste this for you as well, so you can get an idea of what that looks like using the Article Writer 4.0. So that will be in your downloadable document there. But as you can see, with both the chat writers and the article writer with Writesonic, both of them really give you an excellent draft of a clinical trial summary that can be used whether you're writing for the web, whether you're embedding that as part of a CE monograph, or whether you're actually in the business of providing clinical trial summaries. If you need specific formatting, really short sentences, some of these things that editors really won't, like you're doing Congress summaries and things of that nature, I would really suggest that you move towards the chat writer, because you can tell the chat writer, write short sentences, write bullet points, don't do this, don't do that. You can kind of constrict it to the format that you need, so that you get the output for something like a Congress or conference summary. All right, so let's now turn to using the chat writers to learn how to actually find work rather than only writing the work. So there are some creative ways you can use these AI writers to help you identify the work. And in this lecture, we will look at how to identify companies that hire medical writers. And I know when I first started with medical writing, this was a challenge, is that you don't really know what companies are hiring. As a pharmacist, you kind of typically know the big names. Like in retail, everybody knows Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, independents in your area. In hospitals, you know the big health systems in your area, and then of course, the big drug companies, Pfizer and J&J, and so on and so forth. but the companies that are actually hiring medical writers can be more challenging. So let's see if we can get this chat writer to give us some more information on that. So I've got ChatSonic pulled up. ChatGPT would work for this as well. So let's just tell it, give me, I'm just going to say 15. Give me the names of 15 companies that hire medical writers. So that's an example of a really simple prompt you could use, and you can see what it gives you. One thing to know is that at the time of this writing, these chat writers do not have access to real-time data. So for that reason, it could give you companies, but this particular chat writer could not give you any information about jobs. So we would need to use different tools for that. But you can see if I just type in something really simple, they've actually pulled up a lot of big players here. Medtronic does primarily medical devices. They hire a lot of medical writers. Syneos Health is a huge kind of conglomerate of different medical communications firms. So these are a lot of names I'm seeing. PPD is a contract research organization. And then they've got kind of a smattering of drug companies here too, Merck and Sanofi, and all of those who do hire in-house writers as well as contracted out. So that gives you a good start. We could actually get a little more specific and see if we can have it give you the names for specific types of writing. Give me the names of, let's just say 10, just for a time, so it'll produce it faster and we can get more examples in. Give me the names of 10 companies that produce continuing education for, I'll put one that I get a lot, but there's that maybe would be harder to find, for physical therapists. Let's just say that. Because if they produce continuing education and you are a physical therapist, then they might need that. Then they would need physical therapists to write that. Let's see. I'm not even sure why it wrote that about it's not relevant, but then it gave it to us anyway. So I'm not a physical therapist, so I don't necessarily know the names of these companies, but these certainly, ptcourses.com is pretty obvious. So that gives you a good start with that. This time it actually even referenced a few. Let's try pharmacies, because that one I am more familiar with. So give me the names of 10 companies that produce continuing education for pharmacists. Let's see what it'll tell me. And these I am more familiar with. Yeah, so there's quite a few there. I don't know that you're going to get a gig at a university. I'm not familiar in this case with it, but that's likely faculty at the university that does that. But a lot of these others would be great places to start. So you could say, like, I'm just using the number 10 here, but you could say quite a few more. So let's do like one last example with a large list. The reason I think this is important is it takes, when you first get started writing, it's going to take a lot of pitches and a lot of emails and a lot of job applications to start getting your first jobs. And even after you've been writing a while, you still might have to put in quite a few applications to get responses, just because it's a numbers game. Earlier this year, even being established as a writer, I needed to pick up some more work, and I had to put in 20, 30 applications to start getting responses, and I got my fair share of rejection letters too, even for jobs I was clearly qualified for. So with it being a numbers game, it's better to have a huge list of companies to start from. So let's do a larger list. Let's see, give me the names of 40 companies that hire medical writers yeah, let's say do not include drug manufacturers, because we kind of know those names, Merck and Pfizer and J&J and AbbVie and all those. Do not include drug manufacturers. Only, or please include companies that produce continuing education, healthcare professional websites, consumer health websites. So you see I'm kind of naming some of the types of companies that do these kind of things, medical communications firms, and any other companies that hire medical or health writers. Let's just see if this one will work. If not, we'll modify this prompt. And actually it produced it pretty fast. So there you go. There are 40 different companies hiring medical writers. So all you really have to do is copy and paste these into Google, add the word careers at the end of it, and it would pull up the careers page.